Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the ABH 0127 by 0320 by SPLO-7079. This is absolutely a custom pivot. If you're seeing this video, you are likely very deep into the world of custom pivots if you're looking at this video. This is a job for a client, a fellow who's an old school carpenter, really. Doesn't do email, doesn't do text, certainly doesn't get too technical, but what he does know are routers and dimensions and how to read templates and whatnot, so he's very good at that. Very custom application he has. And that custom application is an unusually thick door. Seriously unusually thick. 5 1/8 inch. So, went to ABH and asked if they could give us a version of a 0127, which is a center hung pivot, and that center hung pivot's going to mount to the jamb. The whole problem for the client was he couldn't pierce the floor because of radiant heat. And if you've ever seen radiant heat, it's, well, I have, and there's likely different versions of it, but mine was a roll of wire cloth that in it has low voltage that passes, and just because of resistance, generates heat. The byproduct of that resistance and voltage is heat. The possibility of piercing that and ruining the radiant heat is absolute. So we can't drill into the floor is the bottom line. So a jam-mounted option, which was the 0127. So I went to ABH and said, I need an 0127. The door's not going to be extremely heavy. And in fact, the client states it will be within the range of the 200-pound unit. So ABH did some studying, and they came back with an 0127. Really, this is an SPLO 7079, which means it's a special layout. It's their special layout 7079 that is going to give us a jam-mounted center-hung pivot for a 5 1/8 inch thick door. It's not very heavy, but because of the design of the pivot is such that it needs to handle something extremely thick, they're engineering it based on parts that they can work with, based on what based on the thickness of the door. They're over-engineering it by using such large pieces, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, we'll put the tape measure on all this pretty quickly. This has a modified 0320 top pivot in it. Okay, so what this is going to be comprised of is the door portion. It's going to be comprised of the header portion here. And what's going to happen is you'll be able to insert a, some sort of an instrument inside of there and take that roll pin and drive it up, is what you're intended to do there. Yeah, right there. Okay. So that top pin, when you get the top arm installed to the door, the bottom arm installed to the door, the floor portion attached exactly where you want, everything's plumb, the header is prepped, that pin's going to be hanging down, you're going to push that up right through that access hole with a flat bladed instrument, bring the door in, and it's going to hit there. You're going to line that up, and the idea is that it's going to fall through, which it does. Before you get there, however, there is a finish plate that they made. The decorative finish plate right there with the access hole to be able to drive that roll pin up should you ever need to service the item. Ingenious, actually. Substantially larger than an 0127, that's to be sure. Is very likely going to handle a lot more weight than 200 pounds, that's for sure. They're using actually 500-pound rated material here. I can see that they've done custom work down at the bottom, and this is so unique and so special. I ordered two, one for the client that they needed and one for our stock. So if you're doing an unusually thick door, that's 5 inch or so, this is for 5 1/8, and it's center hung, and the concept of it being center hung is so that the hardware is hidden. In fact, it's going to be, oh, I don't recall if it's a bookcase or if it's going to be just two doors put together because of some application that they're doing. I'll resolve that before we move forward. Let's take some dimensional properties of this. So the jamb portion of the bottom, the floor component, jamb portion, the height is about 4.5. Overall width, about 1.15". Overall projection, it's about 4 inch. To the center, the vertical axis of pivoting is about 3.25, maybe 3 3/16. And by the way, this weighs 8.3 pounds. That's a lot of pivot hardware. Overall length of the arm on the bottom, about 9 9/16. Overall width, about 1 11/16 inches. The thickness of that, it's every bit of 1/2 inch, solid stainless. The header, the top of the door portion, about 8 1/16. Its width, about 1 3/4 inches, and its thickness, about 1/4 inch. Then our 0320, it's probably going to be very close, if not identical. Yeah, about 8 inch, about 1 3/4 inches. Yeah, about 1/4 inch. And then that decorative plate, this is probably just 50 thousandths, what they'd make a kick plate out of. That's probably been put onto a laser CNC, holes, you know, pattern cut out, holes cut in, the whole 9 yards. Awesome. Okay, so it's also going to include all of its fasteners, wood and machine screws for everything. Plenty of fasteners here. This is going to require two dozen, 30 screws to get this attached, for sure. It's going to require 30 fasteners. So it's pretty cool. It's also going to come with a custom drawn template. And right there we're going to look at that 2 5/8 radius. That's going to make your door, that's going to get to your door thickness, which is actually 5 1/4, right? 2 5/8 radius, 5 1/8 inch door. We'll take a closer look at both of the documents that are included. And we'll switch to the screen view. We will look at the supporting information, and I'll refresh my memory in terms of what the exact application is. So let's do that now. Thanks to our clients, Architectural Builder Supply is building an additional facility. And what follows is not only a look at the acreage that we're building the facility on, but also first the architectural renderings as they exist, or at least the architectural plans as they exist at this time. Thank you very much. Let's take a look. Okay, so looking at the client's original information, yeah, this is what he has. This door is going to be heavier than 200 pounds, but he's got a 2470 5 1/8 inch thick door. That is comprised of 2 1 3/4 thick doors that are laminated face to face. On the exterior of one face, he has 3/4 inch cedar. On the exterior of the other face, he has 3/4 inch plywood. So I don't know what they're doing with this massively thick door. 1 3/4 thick door. 1 3/4 thick door. 3/4 inch plywood, 3/4 inch cedar, 5 1/8. I wasn't doing the math. 3.5 plus 1.5 inches. Yeah, so with all the margin there, it's going to be 5 1/8, if not 5 3/16. So really thick. So the concept is that he'll be able to mortise right into here for that bottom arm. That's the idea on that. And we went to the manufacturer asking for an 0327, which is center hung. Ah, okay, sure. So the 03, right, yeah. So really what we're dealing with here is ABH 0370 parts to a certain extent, even though they're modified after the fact. And yeah, that's what the door is. That's what we're dealing with. So here's our item. Not a lot to see here in particular, but let's just look at the paperwork that comes with this. So this is called cut sheet. There is no cut sheet for this absolute custom item. However, it is designed on the principle of an 0127, which simply means it's center hung and it's jam mounted right here. All of the dimensions I gave you earlier are how it has deviated from this design. It's a wholly massive derivative of this concept. The only thing it has in common is that it'll be jam mounted, so we don't pierce the floor. So that's a cut sheet. Not much to see there. The other document is the template, and this is what's in the box. And this is what's really fascinating about this project. Okay, so we have the conversation about the bottom pivot, and for the first page, then the second page is the top pivot. So let's look first at the important part, 2 5/8 radius. So you're going to have to achieve a round over of 2 5/8. Now you don't have to, but you'd have to put this into AutoCAD to know whether or not. Pardon me, you'd have to put it into AutoCAD to determine how much of a gap you would need. So based on a 2 5/8 radius, from the jamb to the center line of the vertical axis of pivoting is 2 3/4. The 2 5/8 would be from the edge of the door to that same dimension. So it's 1/8 of an inch. So in order for this unit to swing out to 90 degrees, it'd go a little bit more than 90, but not, well, it would go more than 90, but we'd have to determine that in something like AutoCAD. But because of the center hung nature, where you're moving the vertical axis of pivoting down into the center of the thickness of the door, you have two choices. You either don't round it over or you round it over. The dimension between the jamb and the edge of the door is based on that, and it's based on the amount of round over that you do as well. So this client's going to have to come up with a really large round over bit for this to work. Or however, in a woodworking sense, you might make this. 5 1/8 inch thick door gives you the positioning of where the vertical axis of pivoting, and that is what everything is determined from. And the drawing at the top of page 1 is really, it gives you everything that you need to know. Okay? And what that is first, where is the vertical axis of pivoting? You need to know that because that's where you're going to place the bottom arm mortise and the top of the door mortise for the door portion of the top pivot. It gives you, lots of dimensions here. If you're going to route this, you really don't care about most of these dimensions. The location of the screws is what I mean. You know that you're going to have 1 5/32 plus 6 5/8. That's the overall length. 1 3/4. You know it's a 1/4 inch because it's here for the top plate. You know it's going to be 2 5/8 over to the vertical axis of pivoting. Now you know where to place this. Done. Super easy. 3/16 radius up at the top. Do whatever, well, not do whatever you like. I'm not recommending that you use a 3/8 diameter router bit, but you could, and that will leave you the 3/16 radius. Now, down at the bottom, it gives you the 9 19/32. I forgot what I said, but this is the actual size. We know that it is 2 inch, and we know that it is some thickness. Well, we measured it earlier, it was 1/2 inch. Doesn't really matter, because you're routing 1 11/32 deep in the bottom of the door, such that you will achieve a 1/2 inch radius. A 1/2 inch clearance. Clearance is the dimension from the bottom of the door to the top of the floor. Undercut is the dimension from the bottom of the door to the bottom of the jamb. We don't know what the undercut is. It doesn't really matter. It's clearance that really matters for us. But what we're looking at here, yeah, we need to be mindful. Well, I'm not exactly in love with this drawing because we know that the thickness of our material is 1/2 inch, and they're showing our clearance at 1/2 inch. So I'm going to think we're going to want to hold that depth short by at least a 1/16 of an inch, so that you'll have that 1/16 of an inch margin between the rest of the door and the floor portion, so that you can glide over it easily. But that leads to the explanation of this. What if you wanted a 1-inch clearance? You could do a 1-inch clearance. Just modify the depth, make it shallower. And this template, I don't think, has a relationship between clearance and depth of mortise. It doesn't. But typical templates do. And they're not making it obvious to you that that's how you arrive at that. Meaning, if I wanted a 3/4 inch clearance, what am I going to do to my mortise depth? Well, the math is right here in front of you. So if you want this greater, make this smaller. You could position this anywhere in the depth to achieve the clearance that you need. What might go along with that could be the need for a longer spindle. Let's say that you were running very thick flooring over all of this. You'd need a longer spindle, and then you'd have to modify this dimension. This dimension would be fit to suit your requirement, and then you'd modify this dimension. But clearance is part of the importance of defining the material. I don't know what the client's clearance is going to be, but it will have to be within the realm of what can be achieved, which is about 9/16, because we're going to need a little bit of room here, all the way up to surface mounting this. So, which would be basically 1 9/32 is what it would really be. Plus the 1/2 inch, if you were to surface mount this to the bottom of the unit, which you could do. So that relationship is really important. It's really the hardest aspect on the page to determine how deep you mortise that. Once you know where to place it and the length, width, and thickness of your plates that get mortised, and then you can take the top or the header portion and see all of its dimensions, you already know where you have to place it to the center line, you're really in good shape. Now it's just a matter of drilling and routing holes, and then pre-drilling holes for fasteners. But getting that radius on the edge of the door is going to be crucial. Every pivot template that you look at is going to be the same concept. Some are more detailed than others in certain senses, really just missing that chart of if you want this clearance, go to this dimension for the depth of the mortise. Other templates for pivots have far less information, which may or may not be a good thing or a bad thing. I find that having more information is better because as you gain practice looking at these, you automatically know what to ignore. I'm not looking at any of the hole locations because I'm doing wood. If I was doing hollow metal, I would need to know all of that because I'm going to be welding in steel and I'm going to be drilling and tapping holes for those fasteners. Okay, let's continue talking about this. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. So, moving forward, the largest roundover bit that you're going to commercially find is going to be something about 1.5 inch radius, something in that range. Maybe a little bit bigger, maybe 1.75 inch radius, but it falls quite short of what would be needed. And the only approach I would personally take to this is I would decide to either have the largest radius possible and radius the door, starting here and just putting the largest radius that I could on it, even though it would belly out more. The fact of the matter is it's going to change the 1/8 of an inch, and you'd have to determine what that's going to be. It would have to be either, the only way I would know to do it would be to put it in AutoCAD. The other option you have is that you have a custom roundover bit made with a 2 5/8 radius. I would suppose the requirements of the job would dictate whether or not you would consider that. I don't know what custom bits cost. I would imagine it would be several $100s. Probably be as much as the hardware itself. However, if you had more than one to do, that would be the really slick way to go. Having a roundover bit made for this. So you'll have to determine how to achieve that. Or back to what we said originally, you're going to change that 2 5/8. You're going to have a much larger gap here. Or, well, there's not much else you can do on this one. I was thinking that you might be able to, one trick that you'll see also is you've got the jamb and it is splayed out that way. so that when that door comes through, when that door comes through, you're going to be able to conceal it back here. So you could have that door sit back here. Square edge, huge gap, but your line of sight doesn't allow you to see it. The problem with that, of course, is your maximum degree of opening is going to be, compromised. So all of that would have to get laid out to see where exactly that would occur. It does possibly become, at the end of the day, just easiest to put the proper radius on it that the manufacturer calls out for. And then, of course, you have to deal with the opposite side, or what would be the lock style of the door. And I suppose you could certainly put a very heavy bevel on the door so that it basically clears. When this gets out here, at a certain point it's going to hit. So that 3-degree radius, that 3-degree bevel, which is typical, that's going to need to be something different. So that when this corner gets over to here, that's your jam. You're clearing that with your 5 1/8 inch, thick door. So some thought's going to have to go into that. There is an online resource that I like to recommend. This is about a 10-year-old resource at this point. Hidden pivot bookcase installation. A lot of thought went into this gentleman doing this work, Gary Katz. So if you were to really get into, this one swings out. I imagine what we're doing also swings out. So this might be a really helpful way to go about determining your best way to proceed. All the steps of how to create all of this work. Building the bookcase. This is probably a Rixson 370. Yeah, it is a Rixson 370. It's a 500-pound pivot. This one attaches to the floor. That's what we can't use on this job. Made himself a template for his router. Attach that to the bottom of his board, and he'll route out that preparation, just like he's doing here. Really awesome. Yeah, probably built a substantial amount of interior blocking in that bottom shelf. Yeah, that's what he's showing right here. He's got it mortised, and then he adds another layer of shelf material in there, so he's got something to bite to. Yeah, this is carpentry. Well, what I searched was Gary Katz, G-A-R-Y-K-A-T-Z bookcase, and I was able to find it under This Is Carpentry. So there you go. Other items of note in the template. A couple of points on page 1 to bring to your attention. Center line of top pivot pin must be plumb and straight with bottom pivot. We covered that at length. That's an absolute. Also, it needs to be pointed out that the jam bracket is mortised into the jam. If you were to surface mount that, you're just going to substantially increase the gap between the door and the jam. So it's going to need to be mortised. It doesn't need to be, but it's that's the way it's drawn. On page 2, they're telling you about installing the bottom pivot set, and what they're showing you here, I believe this is meant to be a level. So what they're telling you is that you must level it in each direction. Not only so that the vertical axis of pivoting is perfectly plumb in this orientation, but also tangentially or at a 90 degree. So it can't sit with any, it can't just necessarily sit on top of the floor, because the floor may not be completely level. So you've got to plumb that bottom bracket. It's everything when it comes to the success of this opening. The door opening and closing smoothly, and you know, the door not creeping open or closed as well. That really covers everything on this that I can think of without repeating myself. There is a link below this video, as seen here, to the manufacturer's page. And from this page, you'll be able to pull up not only all of the ABH products we sell by means of this horizontal navigation as seen here, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to their current product catalog, and other encyclopedic documents are here as well, such as special layouts worksheet, cross-reference chart, holder, overhead holder and stop compatibility chart. Their warranty is here as well. Special layouts for overhead holders. I use this sheet occasionally. I've done in the last 6 or 12 months a couple of different projects where clients needed overhead concealed stops for 72-inch wide door was one, and maybe a 62-inch wide project was the other. Yeah, so good quality folks over at ABH. Let's wrap up this video on camera.
If you've made it this far into this video, you must be determined to see it through to the end, and we appreciate your hanging in there with us and watching this entire video. It means a lot. It takes a lot of work to create these videos, in the sense that, you know, it's time taken away from doing other things. However, the advantage for me personally of creating these videos is the fact that it does allow myself to either learn about something new, to reacquaint myself with something, or to reinforce what I believe that I already know. Any comments that you might leave down below would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
ABH was really the only company I thought of when it came to a custom pivot for this type of material. Not that others can't, but ABH is a family-owned business, an independent family-owned business that is more nimble than pivot manufacturers owned by conglomerates, multinational companies. They're all good, regardless of who you're going to mention, but we needed to move a little bit quicker on this project, and they were very agreeable to exploring the idea, and within a couple of days, well, perhaps a week later, I had a drawing, I had a template, I had installation instructions. I got all that before I even had the price, and quite honestly found the pivot hardware extremely reasonable, especially for what it does. So if you need something massive to be able to probably hold a bookcase or something extremely thick, like this, 2 doors that are laminated together, and the plywood and the cedar, I think it's a great option to be able to go with. It's obviously extremely substantial. With its packaging, again, it's 8.3 pounds, and I like the bigger bottom arm than using something off the shelf like the ABH 0370. Even though the weight rating is not really going to change, that bottom arm is larger. If you have need for a custom pivot application, please feel free to reach out to us. If I can't get the proper sort of mechanical answer as a result of this exercise, we know that ABH is willing and able to do it as well. Thank you very much.
Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you. Thanks to our clients, Architectural Builder Supply is building an additional facility, and what follows is not only a look at the acreage that we're building the facility on, but also first the architectural renderings as they exist, or at least the architectural plans as they exist at this time. Thank you very much. Let's take a look. All right, let's take a look at the architecturals as they exist at this moment, or at least it wouldn't be proper to call these architecturals, but it would be proper to call them renderings in the sense of they're conceptual drawings, they're not renderings. So the entire space is going to look like this in terms of a site rendering. This will be a 22,000 square foot building, of which we'll have specific purpose areas. There'll be a workshop down here. This is a few thousand square feet that will be likely woodworking, metalworking, CNC, things of that nature. This will be an office area here, a private office area. This will be Architectural Builders Supply expanded storage area where we will be able to do fulfillment. The entire space in the center is going to be all of the volume, as I call it. Large components will be able to be stored and stocked there. Machinery that's too large to fit otherwise may be put out here. Specific facility rooms, and then some recreation over here. Let's take a look at that drone footage, and thank you very much for taking a look.